Ever since I started learning about money in my early teenage years, I would say, hitting financial independence and retiring early, that was my ultimate goal. To me, that was the dream. It was everything that I wanted. But today, I feel like I'm no longer chasing it the same way anymore, and here's why. So when I was younger, I thought that I would be extremely successful early on in my life and then I would retire at 30 years old. I don't know where I got this confidence from, but I remember even telling my parents that I'm gonna be a millionaire by 24. I'm not sure why millionaire by 24. I think I just read some book or something like that. But yeah, it was to that level. I was so confident that I was going to do this. Well, reality check, I'm 29 and yeah, I didn't hit that goal at 24 years old. But I even read books like, The Lazy Millionaire, The Millionaire Next Door, all of these books that, are kind of in a similar theme where you hit a million or a million plus early on in your life and then you just live a chill life doing whatever you wanted to. I read these books to get into the right mindset. This is what I wanted to achieve. And you can't blame me, right? This was an extremely attractive idea for myself, and I'm sure still to many other people out there, maybe even some of you guys watching this video. Basically, I was thinking, I will work hard early on in my life. I would make it in whether it's my career or in my entrepreneurship journey, and then I would just stroll off to the beach once I hit 35 years old. I would have financial independence. I would retire from my job and then, live my life, have my freedom, travel the world maybe. I don't know what else I wanted to do back then. I can't really remember, but it's probably somewhere along the lines of playing some sports because that's what I really liked. I thought, maybe once I retire, then I can focus on building a footballing career. But now I realize that I'm probably too old for that. So yeah, but I didn't want to work forever. Back then I haven't even started working yet. I was already thinking I don't want to work forever because I thought that working would just be like school, and I didn't really like school. I didn't really like studying for my exams. So I thought if I didn't like this, then I won't like work, and that's why I wanted to hit this goal so desperately. And this is pretty much the FIRE movement, or the Financial Independence Retire Early movement. So this is something that I got into quite early on in my life. I read up on a lot of the blogs, which is why it got me thinking this way. Basically, the concept of this is to have a very high savings rate, which means you save a big portion of your income, you invest that money when you're young, and then you hit your retirement age much earlier than any of your friends. So maybe 35, 40 years old, you're already retired when all of your friends are still slaving away at their corporate jobs. And the way you're going to do this is you will live off of your retirements. Because you save so much and invest so much early on in your life, you now can draw down for your investments, or if you have a dividend-paying asset, you can live off that instead. And there really is a whole community around this idea. I think this is probably the most popular personal finance community out there, and it was made popular by this guy and his blog called Mr. Money Mustache. So I used to read that and I used to get extremely into it. But now, as I approach 29 years old, I realized that my thinking has slightly changed. And one major thing that I realized is that I actually kind of enjoy working. I know this sounds crazy to a lot of people. I think the vast majority of people kind of hate their jobs and they just see it as a way for them to make money so that they can spend money doing things that they actually like. But for me, I do like working. And I know that right now it's probably the best I've ever had it because I'm doing two things that I really enjoy. But even before I went onto this self-employment journey, back when I was working in my corporate job, I still enjoyed my work. Yeah, it's not that every day is rainbow and sunshines and I was having the time of my life. Some days I felt like, just saying screw this, getting up, handing my resignation letter and just leaving the corporate world. But I do realize that I enjoy having challenges. I enjoy solving problems, and I enjoy it to the extent where I feel like if there are not enough challenges in my life, not like I want challenges, but I meant problems for me to solve, then something feels missing. And because of this, I know that I can't work in something mundane where, I have to do the same thing repetitively over and over again. If I had this kind of job, then yeah, I would want to retire early. But if we're talking about really pursuing a meaningful career, trying to climb the corporate ladder, having to solve big problems to, grow revenue or grow profits and stuff like that, I used to do things like that. I do find it fun. And then with what I'm currently doing, I do get a sense of, purpose or meaning whenever I'm creating content. Sometimes I will get DMs from you guys saying how much my content has helped you guys out. Or some of you guys even DM me telling me, you've never invested before in your entire life, but because of my videos, you've gotten the confidence to start. So these things, it really feels good. And then there is my other job, which is being a full-time trader. This is something that I've naturally enjoyed ever since I was young. I remember back when I was a kid still, I used to like playing these MMORPG games where, there is an exchange or a market where people can buy and sell in-game items. So there are so many things to do in that game. You can, kill monsters, you can fight other people. But what I really enjoyed was buying and selling in-game items for me to make more in-game currency. I know, I was a nerd. I wasn't actually playing the game. I was basically just trading in the game. And I realized all of this because sometimes, when I was having lepak sessions with my friends, we would daydream a bit about winning the lucky draw or winning the lottery, hitting the jackpot. And then we think, what would we do with our lives? Typical answer is they would just resign from their jobs, buy a house, go travel the world. But for me, as I thought about it, I thought if I won the jackpot today, I would just want to continue doing what I'm doing right now. I still want to create content. I still want to trade because I enjoy it. Of course, I would probably want to go on to a spending spree first. I want to buy everything that I wanted. I will go travel to some nice places maybe. But I feel like after a while, that will get a bit old. And I would just want to go back to creating content and trading. I'll just want to trade with bigger size. That sounds fun, right? I know this is a boring answer, but for me, I do really enjoy work, and I do think that it gives me meaning in my life. And then the final thing about working, especially in, I would say, a full-time job where you're in the office, is that it gives you social interactions. I think a lot of people oversee this. They don't realize how important it is. But a lot of the friends that I have today are friends that I've made from old jobs. And I think that this is something that happens quite often, where if you don't have a job, if you retire early at 35, 40, you won't have this social aspect in your life anymore, and all of your friends will still be working. And then another thing about retiring early is that I realized it's not as freeing as it seems. So the idea is that we will hit financial freedom and then everything is sorted, right? We can tell F you to our boss and nothing will hold us back. Well, I had a similar-ish experience, I guess not to the same extent, a few years ago, but I realized it's not that straightforward. So nearly 2 years ago, I decided to quit my job to pursue this self-employment journey. And before I made that leap, I of course had to have savings. So I saved up 2 years worth of my expenses, which means that even if for the first 2 years I made zero income, I would still be fine. So this of course gave me a lot of confidence going into this. I felt like, even in the worst case scenario, I would be okay. But even then, by month 2, when my business was not doing as well as I hoped, when my business income did not cover my monthly expenses yet, I started to get worried and I was constantly checking my bank accounts, my ASB, my money market funds to make sure I really had enough for me to survive 2 years. So yeah, even though I had that money, I was still worried. And that made me realize that if I were to retire early and have zero income completely, I would be mentally stressed out. And another thing is that one major requirement for you to retire early is that you need to still invest your money in the market. So you still need to get the 6-7% returns. You can't just put it into a bank account earning you nothing, because that will make your money or your savings deplete or go to zero very, very quickly. But think about it. Let's say now you have 2 million ringgit, you think you can retire, it's in the stock market, and then next year, there's a major stock market crash. Or we go into a lost decade like we saw in the 2000s where the US stock market basically gave 0% returns. What would you do? I think for me, if we got into the scenario and I had zero income, I would really start to worry and I would really start to think, maybe I shouldn't have retired, maybe I should have just continued working on, and I would try and look for another job. So would I say that retiring early would give me complete freedom? Would it make me feel like I'm completely free? I am not so sure. And then the final reason that early retirement is something that I'm no longer chasing is because I do want to enjoy today and I do want to enjoy the present. Like I said, the concept of early retirement means that we need to have a very high savings rate early on in our life. I have seen some people on the FIRE subreddit saving 60, 70, sometimes even 80% of their income. I think that is crazy. Imagine 80% savings rate means that even if you earn 10K a month, you're saving 8K. You can only survive off of 2K. To me, that is crazy and I can't do that. Initially, I thought that I could do this, just sacrifice the first 10, maybe 20 years of my life, grind hard at work, save money, because the payoff would be that I would enjoy my life after retirement. After 35, after 40, I would enjoy it then. So, it was something that I considered, right? Delayed gratification is good. Sacrifice now, enjoy later. Well, plans have changed for me because I realized there's not much point rushing to get to my destination only to suffer throughout the entire journey. I like all of these sayings. I really believe in it. Things like, don't forget to stop and smell the roses, it's not about the destination, it's the journey. And then of course, there's Miley Cyrus who sings about the climb. I think these are all things that I really believe in. I know it's cheesy, but I do think that we need to enjoy the entire process, not just the destination. And I want to go on those nice holidays. I want to buy the latest gadgets. I want to have the iPhones. I want to buy nice gifts for people around me. These are all things I still want to do now, not later on in 20, 30 years' time. Because let's say, what if you sacrifice everything early on in your life for the first 10, 20 years? You sacrifice everything, you hit your goal, you're retired at 40, and then you're 41 years old and you realize this is not what I wanted. What's next? You already gave up the first 20 years of your life. And I also realized that life is short and we never know how long we're going to live. So I prefer to balance between enjoying the present and saving for the future. I think it's important to have both of these things, I guess, almost equally, right? Maybe that would mean that I would have to work a bit longer than if I were to save a lot of money now. But to me, so what, right? Like I said, I do kind of enjoy working anyway. And then another major realization for me is that I realize having options to do what I want gives me the most satisfaction. So yeah, some of you guys might be thinking, if I retire early, that would give me the option to do whatever I wanted, right? That is the ultimate freedom. But the thing is, when you retire early, you still need to stick to a budget. You can't just ball out in the first year because that would mean you won't have enough to last until you hit 80 years old. So you still need to stick to that budget. It still is kind of a rigid lifestyle. So having said all of that, what is the new goal for me? I still need to work towards something, right? So I'm thinking right now that instead of work being mandatory, I want work to be optional. So in my ideal scenario, in my ideal target, in my 30s, 40s, I won't have enough money saved up where I can retire comfortably for the rest of my life. But I should have enough money where if, let's say, I don't have an income for 10 years, I would still be fine. I would still be, okay, and I can still enjoy the same standard of living that I'm living if I had an income. And the real ideal point for me is that my investments are earning me a good enough amount of money where I only need an active income of anywhere between 2,000 to 3,000 ringgit a month, and anything on top of that will just be a bonus. I like this idea because this would mean that I can do whatever I want. I can try new careers, right? I really want to try, driving a Grab for a while, meeting new people and stuff like that. I could go and try start a farm, have goats, ducks, cows. I can do all of these things without really having to worry about having a high income, climbing in my corporate job, climbing the career ladder and earning a lot of money. I won't really have to worry about that too much anymore, just because my saving rate or my savings amount is already so high that even if I just left it there, it would grow to a pretty large amount by the time I hit retirement age. And I kind of had a mini version of this 2 years ago. So this is of course not the financial freedom level where I can survive 10 years or I can really feel comfortable. But like I said, a few years ago, I saved up enough money where I could survive 2 years without any income. So I would call this sort of like mini financial freedom, right? And I did this, and because I did this, I could pursue what I wanted, which is to go the self-employment route, to go create content full-time alongside being a full-time trader as well. Having that money allowed me to explore these opportunities, and then it ended up, these opportunities actually brought me a much higher level of income. So this is really what I'm looking for when it comes to my financial freedom. And I also feel that the good thing about having this as a goal is that number one, it's a lot easier for us to achieve because instead of targeting 10 million ringgit, the target will come down a bit lower. It comes down to maybe 5 million ringgit because we're not looking to retire forever, right? And then number two is that this is a continuous goal. Instead of just having one goal and then, tunnel visioning to achieve that goal, doing whatever it takes to hit that goal, instead this is a continuous goal. To me, I see it more as milestones. So maybe 1 million is a milestone, 2 million, 3 million, and every time I hit a milestone, I'll just think about how I feel and think about what I want to do next. But don't get me wrong, I'm not encouraging or advocating for you guys to be completely financially irresponsible. Maybe some of you guys watch this video and think, oh, Emir told me that I shouldn't worry too much about the future. I don't need to save for retirement. I should just enjoy now. Don't get me wrong, that's not what I'm saying. I will still continue to save and invest a big portion of my income. What has changed is that instead of aiming to escape from the working world, from the corporate world, the goal now is to have enough money where I have a lot more options to do what I want. So I go through a lot of these retirement-related subreddits where, people who have hit their retirement number already and they're already retired, they say these things which to me makes a lot of sense. So they say that you cannot retire from something, you must retire to something, which basically means you cannot retire because you hate your job. you must retire because there's something else that you really want to do. Otherwise, I would say that your retirement would be pretty meaningless. So let me know, what do you guys think about retiring early, and how do you find that balance between enjoying the present while also saving for the future? Thanks for watching this video to the end, guys. Give me a huge thumbs up if you enjoyed it and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. See you guys in the next one. Peace out.